Hey guys, welcome back to Wizarding Alice. My name is Alice. On this channel we cover all things Harry Potter, Wizarding World, and a bit of Scotland travel and lifestyle thrown in there as well. If that sounds like something that interests you, be sure to subscribe below. I want to start off with a couple of life updates before we get into this video. Number one, yes, I'm in my pajamas. I'm taking the day off work to have a little bit of a sick day. I'm not feeling too great. I feel like every single video I'm like, I'm not feeling well, but that's because I stockpile videos, so I film like a bunch in a day, and when I have time to film those videos is normally when I'm like taking time off work, which is normally when I'm sick. So I swear I'm a healthy person, but today I'm feeling a bit under the weather, so I figured I'd stay in my pajamas and film a nice, cozy, relaxing, not particularly high energy video for you guys. I also want to apologize for my lack of I don't know what the right word is, I guess engagement with you guys. Obviously I've not missed a week of uploading, but I haven't really been putting up any like bonus videos recently or really engaging much on Instagram or Twitter. My life has just seemed like it's just been so busy at the moment. Obviously work is really ramping up, it's just a busy time at work, and I've had lots of holidays and stuff, which I'm not complaining about, but obviously that's taken up time that I would have been like doing more YouTube things. And as you guys now know, I'm doing a university course at the same time, so those three things are pretty much taking up my entire life right now, and I've got lots of deadlines coming up and things like that, so it's been a bit crazy. So I really apologize. I've not really been like responding to comments as well as I normally would. I've not really been posting much, so do apologize about that. I'm going to try and get better, but I really appreciate you guys sticking through that and supporting me. But now that that's out of the way, we're going to do a very fun video today, and I am going to be reacting to some Harry Potter fan theories. So what I did is I looked at a bunch of websites online and I wrote down 10 that interested me, either because I think there's lots to talk about or because I like strongly agree or disagree with them. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to going through these 10 with you guys. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so number one is Dumbledore hoped Harry would develop an Obscurus. So obviously this is relating to Harry being in the Dursleys and having to suppress his magic tendencies, which, as we know from Fantastic Beasts, can develop into an Obscurus. And hold on, I feel like I've knocked the camera. I think the general thinking behind that is that Dumbledore wanted Harry to develop an Obscurus because it would be a way to protect himself being Harry, against Voldemort. If Voldemort ever came looking for him, he would be an Obscurus and he'd be incredibly powerful and would likely be able to defeat Voldemort in some way or another. I like this idea. I don't think it works when you really start to unpack it. For example, Harry's already protected. You know, he's at the Dursleys because that protects him. Voldemort couldn't get him there, so there's not really any point. The theory also says that when Harry goes to Hogwarts, Dumbledore could like cure the Obscurus, but again, there's just really no need for that. On top of that, I'm pretty sure at this point Dumbledore has an idea that Voldemort has created Horcruxes, so again, Harry being Obscurus, it's not like he was going to be able to kill Voldemort because he'd have to kill all the Horcruxes as well, do you know what I mean? So I thought this was a really interesting concept, but it's not what I necessarily think is true. Also, I do think J.K. Rowling kind of just made up the Obscurus thing when she was writing like the last book or two. I don't think it's something that was kind of planned from the beginning.
No.
Okay, this next theory is actually very similar to the first one, and it says Dumbledore wanted Harry to fail at OCULMENCY. And I think the thinking behind that is that obviously if Harry failed at OCULMENCY, it meant that he was seeing into Voldemort's mind, and it meant that, you know, they were getting more updates as to what Voldemort was doing, and similarly, Voldemort was seeing into Harry's mind, so Dumbledore was kind of thinking he could maybe like control what Voldemort was seeing through Harry. Because obviously the worse he got at OCULMENCY, the more his mind was open, as Harry found out later on in the book. I'm on the last chapter of that book with my reread, so yeah. This one's fresh in my brain. Again, a very interesting theory, but again, one I just don't think is true, because Dumbledore is very very keen in the books for Harry to do well at OCULMENCY, and when he doesn't, he's like, that wasn't good, because that's why I started avoiding you, because, you know, I didn't want Voldemort to be able to see me, and it was causing all these inconveniences and obviously was really hurting people. So I just don't see anything sort of written in the text that would imply that Dumbledore was lying in those instances or anything like that. So I think it's a really cool concept, but again, I'm gonna vote no on this one.
No.
This next one is I completely forgot the word. What are they called? Theory. You can see my brain's not at full capacity. This one is a really interesting theory. I've heard it before and I absolutely love it. And it's that Harry and Ron were natural seers. So obviously when they were in divination, they absolutely hated it. They thought it was a load of nonsense and they were just like completely making things up off the top of their head just to get their homework done and things like that. And Trelawney was always talking about how amazing it was, and they were like, well, you're not even an actual seer, so what do you know, that kind of thing. They just didn't like it, didn't take it seriously. But a lot of the things that they predict, like just make up and predict just because they're bored and want to get their homework done, actually end up coming true. And I just think it's like such a cool idea that these two who are like taking the piss, basically the whole class, were the only ones who were coming up with actual true predictions. And I just love the idea that they both were like imagining like, okay, I'll just come up with this, but because they were so good at seeing into the future, they were coming up with actual things, and the things they were seeing in the tea leaves and in the crystal ball were all completely true. Like I love that one so much. So that is definitely getting a certified thumbs up for me, that theory. I 100% believe that in my headcanon completely.
Yes. Yes!
Theory number 4 is a very interesting one, and it says that the Dementors were more interested in Harry than they were in other people because they could detect 2 souls. Now this is something that isn't written in the books like explicitly, but it's definitely something I think makes sense. So obviously Lupin says to Harry, the reason why the Dementors are so interested in you is because you've seen a lot of grief and you've got a lot of like, darkness in you because of your past and things like that, and they're drawn to that, which totally makes sense, and I definitely think that's a part of it. But I think it makes total sense that the Dementors are also finding a bit of Voldemort's soul in Harry. So he's basically got a soul and a half, and why would you go for all these people that just have one measly little soul when there's someone who's got so much more? So I think that makes absolute perfect sense. It doesn't matter that it's Voldemort's soul, just that it's someone else's soul as well. And that's why they're always coming for Harry, and explains why he's in like a crowd of people and the Dementors go straight for him. Is it because he's the main character? Maybe, but it might also be because he's got a soul and a half. Think about it.
Yes.
Okay, this next theory is a pretty common one. You've probably heard it before. I think it's kind of widely recognized as being true at this point. But essentially, when you look at the tale of the 3 brothers, the 3 brothers are Snape, Voldemort, and Harry, and Dumbledore is Death. And it makes total perfect sense, because if you think of the story, one of the brothers was basically like had the resurrection stone and tried to resurrect his lost love, and that was his whole life, was how much he loved this person. Like that's Snape, right? Snape with Lily, like 100%. There's the one who wanted, I can't remember their names off the top of my head. There's the one who wanted the Elder Wand and wanted to be completely powerful, Voldemort 100%. And then there's the one with the invisibility cloak that kind of evaded death until a time that he was ready to die, which again makes sense with Harry. And obviously the Elder Wand already matches with Voldemort because he had it, and the invisibility cloak works with Harry because he owns the invisibility cloak. And then Dumbledore being Death makes perfect sense. He's kind of the overseer of everything. And obviously when Harry goes to the ghost platform 9 3/4 or King's Cross, Dumbledore is there and welcomes him, and Harry welcomes Death as an old friend, but obviously decides at that point to continue living for a while longer. But that's exactly what happens to the invisibility cloak brother in the story. Like, it gives me chills. Like, it makes total sense. I think it's 100% true. That is getting a certified thumbs up. Molly Weasley, and the whole Weasleys for that matter, were planted deliberately at King's Cross at the exact time Harry got there, so that they were the first wizarding family that he met. I think it might be the Super Carlin brothers that first came up with this theory, but I could be wrong. I'm sorry if I am. I want to give credit where credit is due, but that's where I first heard it. And I think this is a really interesting theory. So the idea is that, Harry obviously had the potential to go They could go in any house, obviously, but could go into Slytherin or Gryffindor was kind of the main thinking, and we think that's what Dumbledore was kind of thinking at the time. So obviously, if the Malfoys had been the first people that Harry had met, he was probably just going to be grateful to have met someone, have a friend. You know, I know Harry technically did meet Malfoy, but you know what I mean, in Madame Malkin's. But if those were the first kind of wizarding families he was introduced to, he might have been more interested in that kind of thing and eventually sort of gone into Slytherin and gone down maybe a completely different path. But because it was the Weasleys that he first met, they kind of brought him over to the Gryffindor side and kind of instilled all these good values in him and things like that. And people say that Dumbledore orchestrated that deliberately to push Harry down a certain path that would eventually lead him to defeating Voldemort. This is a very interesting one. I think it makes perfect sense, but I'm not sure it was intended in the source material. And I suppose that's where with theories it's like, do I think this makes sense and so I'm going to choose for it to be true, or is it this is what I think the author intended? Because in this instance I don't think she intended it, but I'm going to believe it to be true. Okay, theory number 7 says that Hagrid got ARAGOG from NEWT Scamander. This is very interesting. It kind of does what it says on the tin, but obviously Hagrid said he got the acromantula from a traveller who had a spider egg, and so he took it and looked after ARAGOG and all the rest of it. I just don't see where the sort of logic lies in this one, to be honest. Like, he could have got it from anybody. There's nothing to suggest that he got it from NEWT Scamander. Also, I don't want to like be miserable, but I think NEWT Scamander might be dead by that point. So we know that Hagrid, oh maybe not actually, I'm doing some maths. Hagrid had ARAGOG as a baby when he was in school. So we imagine that he maybe went to school in the 70s. NEWT Scamander was in his, let's be nice, 20s, in the 20s. So he could be like 70. He'd still be alive. I suppose that makes sense, but I just don't think it fits with his character that he would just go giving his fantastic beasts to random people. Like, yes, Hagrid would have come across as someone who would take exceptional care, but I still just don't see NEWT Scamander giving them out, especially because it was illegal as well. So it's an interesting idea. It's a thumbs down for me.
No, God!
This next theory is again one that's very widely talked about, which is that the Golden Trio, Harry, Ron and Hermione, each represent the other houses. So Harry represents Slytherin. That's pretty overtly in the books and the films, that Harry has a lot of the Slytherin traits, partly himself and partly because of Voldemort's soul being in him as well. Hermione obviously represents Ravenclaw, that love of knowledge and learning and, you know, wanting to be the best, no offense Ravenclaws, and Ron represents Hufflepuff, you know, that kind of loyalty and strong morals and all that kind of thing. And this theory that I read was kind of saying that that's why they were all put in Gryffindor, because together they make the perfect Gryffindor by representing all three. I'm not sure I agree with that take. I do think that that's why they work so well together. That's why they were drawn to each other, because together they do make the perfect team. But I don't think it's got anything to do with making the perfect Gryffindor. I think they all just have Gryffindor traits that overrode all the other ones, and that's why the Sorting Hat put them in Gryffindor. But I think they were attracted to each other and worked so well because they represent the traits of the other houses as well.
You are correct, sir.
Number 9 is a really interesting one, and one I'm not sure I'd come across before, but maybe you have. So it said, Harry was treated badly at the Dursleys because he's a Horcrux. Now, obviously, we know that Horcruxes, a bit like the ring in Lord of the Rings, pretty sure that was a stolen idea, that, you know, if you're around it for a really long time, making contact with it, then it has a really negative impact on your mood and your state of mind and your well-being and how you treat those around you. So it makes perfect sense that the Dursleys, you know, being around Harry, who is a Horcrux for 17 years, pretty much, you know, would have become these negative people. It does make perfect sense. The only problem is they, you know, towards his later years, they were only with him 2 months of the year, the summer holidays, whereas the rest of Hogwarts, particularly Ron for example, was around him like 24/7 for 10 months of the year and didn't have that same impact. And you could say, well, it's because they're wizards, but Ron was affected by the ring, Horcrux. So unfortunately, I don't think it holds up once you really start dissecting and looking into it, but I do think it's a very interesting idea. But thumbs down on this one.
Good guess, but actually no.
Okay, the 10th and final theory is a really fun one, so I thought let's just end on something a bit light-hearted. And you've probably heard this before, I have heard this floating around, which is that George Weasley is Willy Wonka. So obviously Fred and George set up the joke shop, Fred died, George and Ron continued to run Weasley's Wizard Wheezes. But this theory says that George got a hold of a time turner, went back in time and set up Willy Wonka's chocolate shop, and he is in fact Willy Wonka, pulling together the Harry Potter universe and the Roald Dahl universe together. Why not? I love this theory. I think it's completely untrue. There's absolutely nothing that connects this to any kind of source material or any hints or clues or any of it being right. But you know what? It's so fun and so wacky. I'm like, yeah, you know what? In my soul, I believe it. George Weasley is Willy Wonka. There's W's, Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, Willy Wonka. It makes total sense. You can't deny it. It makes total sense. So that is a thumbs up for me, and that is my winning theory out of all of these. George Weasley is Willy Wonka.
Correct!
So that does it. Those are my 10 theories for today. Some of them I really agreed with, some of them not so much. Some I was kind of somewhere in the middle. So I would love to know, feel free to pop your thoughts on these 10 theories in the comments below, and also let me know if there's any other theories that you've heard that you'd like me to react to, because I'm sure I'll do another one of these videos at some point in the future. There's so many theories floating about. I'd be more than happy to do more if this was something that interested you. Thank you so much for watching this video. I've got loads of cool videos coming up, especially in the new year. I'm kind of starting afresh with this channel, giving it a bit of a refurb, so I'm really excited about that. So be sure to subscribe and stick around. My social media links are in the description below, and I will see you next time. Bye!